I'm Colleen McLaughlin Barlow, and I'm the first artist in residence at a telescope. My first telescope was the Canada-France-Hawaii telescope. 2011, after that experience, I was invited to the Gemini telescope in the Andes Mountains of Chile, and then the Large Binocular Telescope in Tucson, Arizona. Good, slide one. So the first comment or question for most people is, why would anyone want to do an art residency at a telescope? To answer that, I have to take you back a few years, when with a small party of academics from UBC, I was offered a really special tour of the Canada-France-Hawaii telescope on the Big Island of Hawaii. One of our party was a past director of the telescope, astronomer Harvey Richer, who's here tonight, so pleased to hear her. He arranged an exclusive tour with the then director to the summit and inside the observatory dome. It was the most extraordinary landscape. The mountain of Mauna Kea, above the vegetation line, were rocks and gravel colored by the oxides of the mineral deposits from the last ice age. We experienced brilliant sunshine, a snowstorm, hail, and rain within about 10 minutes on our final approach. Halfway up, we had to acclimate at the stone house, Haleʻipohaku, for about an hour to let our bodies adjust to the increasingly sparse levels of oxygen. At 14,000 feet at the top, there's about 40% less oxygen than at sea level. Most people experience this as being slightly drunk. Even with my slightly skewed perceptions, I was astonished at seeing the precision engineering of the actual scope contrasted with its surroundings. It was like being in a James Bond movie. As the sun set, we went out into the outer catwalk around the belly of the dome, watched the clouds far below us, the weather over Waimea. The moon and stars were spectacular. I was so moved by all the visuals, the people who interact with the telescope as engineers and technicians, moving around tons of precision optics, lenses, the machinery to run it all. It was extraordinarily beautiful and moving. When you combine these scenes with the knowledge that the science ongoing was charting the outmost reaches of the universe and what we know about it, well, it was compelling. Mauna Loa was active just then, kind of impressive. I dreamt about the telescope, I nattered on about the telescope, and I thought more and more about the telescope, and on the suggestion of my husband, I made a proposal to the director, Christian Vier. Dr. Vier said yes and invited me to come and make art for a month as the first artist in residence at a telescope. I lived and worked alongside the scientists and engineers of the scope, and not only had access to almost everything in the offices, but also went up to the summit. A slight bit of background. There have been artists in residence at a few tiny civic corporations, the most famous being the huge European firm Schlumberger, who invited a little-known British artist to come and make work for a while at their offices about 20 years ago. The price of poker was they got to keep a piece of the artist's work. That artist was Damien Hirst, and Schlumberger now has an entire staff dedicated to curating their impressive art collection, which is one of the company's chief assets, and has mostly been acquired through their artist in residency program. The commodification of artwork, but that's another talk. I wanted my time at Canada-France-Hawaii Telescope to be a dialogue, not just a one-sided conversation with me making art and leaving. So I offered creative break art exercises to the staff. They could come down to my studio and sign up for one of 4 different activities. The art that I made and the art that they made was all exhibited in a big exhibition at the end of the month before I left. I was given a studio space to work in at Waimea, a small town closer to sea level on the Big Island, where the main offices of CFHT were located. I was also offered rides up to the telescope, dome at summit, where I'd work for the day with the engineers and technical teams and then be brought back down to Waimea. The night observations are done by remote from Waimea for the most part. I tried to do due diligence before I left. I prepared notes and sketches, project ideas for the time I was going to be there. What I wasn't prepared for was what happened. Not only did working there stimulate me to produce some amazing art, to me anyway, but working with me in the studio, astronomers, physicists, engineers, software programmers, they all made some really memorable art, and in some cases they overcame old psychological wounds to do so. Here are some of the photos and paintings. That's inside the telescope dome. It's a painting of somebody adjusting the optics. It's a painting of somebody taking a coffee break. That's going up in the trans crane. Fix something way up top. That's panicking. And engineers have to panic because they got to solve problems, got to be solved by that evening, you know, because that's when the science is going forward. Right. I know, it's odd. Overall, making art at 14,000 feet was a bit of a challenge due to altered perceptions. What the CFHT staff helped me figure out was, at altitude, your brain starts to die and your sense of judgment is totally shot. So you just have to do your list of tasks and keep checking on that progress to achieve anything. You have to fuel with all the junk food we avoid down here at sea level. So the brain runs on sugar, and you need salt to slow down your kidneys, which go into overdrive at altitude. So we're eating beef, jerky, donuts, candy, strong coffee, Doritos. It's all helpful in the fight to keep what brain cells you have operational. In the early days of the telescope, astronomers would have to spend long nights perched inside the telescope to make observations, and they'd get cold and bored, and some of them decided to work on their scientific papers while they were up there. What they discovered was that they would think they were doing a fine old job, get back down to sea level and realize it was moose drool. Absolute drivel. There's a big sign in the lounge, never work on the big problems at altitude. So, that just gives you a sort of scenario of where I'm making art, okay? So, here's some more of my work created in Hawaii. There's a lot of work, but this is just a bit of a sampling because it's a short talk. This was actually painted in Vancouver before I left. It's after I'd seen the telescope with Harvey Richer and co., but before the residency. It's an image I had of the telescope in a dream with all the weather conditions swirling around it. It's called Dream of the Telescope. Oops, back one. Can I go back one? There, good, I can. Harness the technology, Colleen. Okay, this mountain of knowledge is a diptych. It's a large landscape painting in which quotes from the staff about their contributions to the telescope are hand-lettered in gold or silver leaf onto the mountain supporting the telescope observatory. So, you know, it's the mountain of their knowledge that the telescope is actually resting on. There's English, French, Portuguese, mathematical formula, computer code, and Hebrew. There are quotes from astrophysicists, astronomers, engineers, accountants, and technical support workers. Harvey, you're on there. Okay. This is the silver sword fern. It's one of the rarest plants on Earth. It's only found on the sides of Mauna Kea Mountain at the vegetation line. It blooms once every 50 years. I got special permission to gather the dead cast-off leaves of the plant to grind into a special medieval ink recipe, which I then used to render the images of the plant. So, I sketched and painted a lot of portraits, you know, just pictures of people doing science, doing tech stuff. That's the head of engineering, Derek Salmon. Here's an astronomer from India. Used to make lunch for me once in a while, really good curry. This is a Madonna engineer, 1 week before her maternity leave, still working away there. One night on night observations, I visited the big computer room with my camera, and I made swings with it in long exposures to capture the light movement, kind of drawings in lights. And I made abstract acrylic paintings from the captured images. This is a land work done on my first morning at the telescope. It's a picture of the first image the telescope was able to capture when it was turned on in the 70s at first light. I moved wet snow into position in the gravel at the summit to create the shape, and then photographed it with various filters to create the final image. I had no idea that people have art scars, like some of us have math scars. Maybe not everybody in this room, but So some people would show up at the studio saying, my supervisor said I need to do one of these art breaks with you, so here I am. In the same tone, you'd announce that you'd shown up for your root canal. Right? So on the workshop front, I knew I had to offer activities which could be done in under 15 minutes, not require advanced artistic skills, and offer impressive results. So one of the activities was cyanotype printing. This is where the artist places objects on light-sensitive paper, exposes the composition to sunlight for a minute or two, then stop bathes the paper in water to remove the chemicals and freeze the image. The image continues to develop into a myriad of blue tones over the next few hours as the paper dries, so we were making art with the help of our own solar system's star. I discovered that people don't know what to put down on the paper. You can get them to empty their pockets, and that always works. Some people were so excited they kept visiting their work as it dried long after the creative break. As well, I told them not to jiggle the composition of objects on the paper as it was exposed, no jiggling. And they all jiggled as they moved out into the central courtyard to expose the paper to the sun. And this resulted in lovely multiple images. This was lesson 1. Mistakes are an artist's best friend. So from doing analysis with the right side of their brains all day, judging things, they moved to working intuitively and sending the judge out of the room for a while. Many people said the effect was like having a nap. Some people felt they were better at problem solving after a creative break. At the base of the mountain are ancient pictographs as well as the famous Hawaiian stick charts. The first is evidence of the first culture in the island, and the second, the stick charts, are maps, which were lashed to the outrigger canoes which showed the way from Tahiti to Hawaii and back again. They're star charts. I'm doing a printmaking project about them with the full blessing of the Hawaiian indigenous community. It's called The Stars Brought Us Here. Oh, there was a lava flow too going on. Just love it. There was a fissure opened up on Mauna Loa while we were there. So that was kind of wonderful. So, the reaction to my own work has been positive. One enormous engineer, a tough Hawaiian, who challenged me at the beginning of the residency by pointing out, you don't belong here. We're all scientists and technicians. We're here because this is our place. We don't need any artists. He came to me at the final exhibition outside in the hall, and he stopped me, and he actually was tearing up. He said, you see us as heroes. I didn't know you could paint that. I pointed out that people who solve engineering problems at altitude with 40% less oxygen than normal so that thousands of dollars of science can go forward that night are heroes, in my opinion. So the invitations to other telescopes came about due to Dr. Villier's report to the International Umbrella Organization of Telescope Directors who meet in Paris. Dr. Villiers was positive about having an artist in residence. He felt it enhanced the work environment. So shortly thereafter, I was invited to Chile and then Tucson, where I'm headed later this spring. I'm currently working on a book about my adventures. I'm still processing a lot of the work from Chile, but here are some pictures from the start of things. Okay. So this is a somewhat pedestrian-looking screen capture, but it's actually thrilling. It's information about the makeup of a planet on the outer reaches of the known universe. The binary-coded strips, which look like pleated aluminum foil, are actually facts about the surface of the planet. There's water there, which was previously unknown, and also the possibility of life such as bacteria. They have to sift through all this data with the probability mathematician's equations to optimize the data set, but it's all in there. I'm doing a project which takes this information from the screen capture to a visual incarnation of what it means. It'll be a large-scale aluminum sculpture. That's Gemini at night. And then finally, of all the luck, I was the only artist in the world at Gemini 2 in Chile, one of the key world telescopes charting the landing of a space probe onto a comet. Yes, I was there then, in November. Hey Rosetta, hey Philae, and yes, that is going to be another art project. Oh, it's not going. Yeah. That's the last slide. Well, what? There was one more slide. Yeah, it's like the shot of first shot of Philae sending us a photograph from the comet. I guess it's not there.
Okay, well, we'll do that.
You probably will.
I'll find it.
Okay, at any rate. Yeah, right. Not right now. Anyway, thanks very much for listening.
Doesn't work at all. Okay. Just wait. So, Colleen, do we have any questions for Colleen about her time at the Space Telescope? So that. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, you made a comment that scientists had a lot of trouble thinking. Did you find that because such altitude changed your creative process?
Yeah, it was food. It was a little like that. At altitude, like, you know when you drink and you take drugs and you get, you're okay. And that actually can help people's creativity flow, right? We all know that, those of us that, yeah. Well, it's a little like that, except as when you're drinking, your judgment is shot. So I remember having the experience of thinking, oh, this is really hot, this is really great. And then I get it down to sea level, and stuff that I thought was really amazing was like, and other stuff that I'd done just as a matter of course on my project list that day was really good. So what you had to do was be really patient with yourself. The first day I was at altitude, I had a camera with me, and I was going to do that land work that I showed you. I spent about 15 minutes wondering why, after I turned my camera on, why it was dark when I looked through it. Lens cover. So I had this cheat sheet inside my parka because it's minus 10 up there. It's really cold, right? So inside my parka, it's got turn on camera, take off lens. I mean, it really looks like an idiot list, but that's the way the engineers work up there to do complex engineering, and it works for art too. You just totally process driven up there because if you think you know what you're doing, you don't. So that's kind of convoluted answer to that question.
We have time for one more question. Anyone? You have a question?
Oh yeah.
Is that your last slide?
That's it. Thank you.
Speak to your last slide.
That's Philae. That's a shot from a comet, everybody. We landed on a comet. And I was there with a guy who had helped design the thing that landed, the Philae, and he said, hey, he was so excited when they finally got it nailed. He said, we had the first, second, and third landings of a comet today because, it bounced, right? You probably knew this.